Hey everybody, it's Mike from Profiling Evil, and I wanted to jump in quickly to share with you the press conference that happened down in Grand County, Utah today. The sheriff there is a buddy of mine, Sheriff Steve White. We've actually worked murder cases together, and as I've mentioned many times on Profiling Evil, I have a great deal of respect for him. Well, more than a year after those two women were found dead in the mountains in Grand County, that's Moab, Utah, same place where we talked about Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie in the domestic violence case. They have closed the case on the murder of two women, Crystal Michelle Turner and Kylan Schulte, who were found shot to death out on the South Mesa area. And if you remember that case, it was one that had so many twists and turns. But I think you're going to find by listening to this press conference that law enforcement really does kind of answer the questions. Now, I'm still a little confused, and I'm still a little bit troubled by the fact that if these women worked with this suspect at McDonald's, which is part of this whole entire story, why on earth would they call him the creepy guy instead of calling him by name? And I'm going to just wait for your answers down below, and if you think they satisfied what this case was all about. It's really going to boil down to a confession made to a second party. So I think that this can be interesting. So thanks so much for supporting Profiling Evil. Let's dive into this case, and we'll talk in just a minute.
So this is the case of the double homicide that occurred in the Grand County. The incident date is going to be August 14th of 2021. So as far as the assisting agencies, so the main assisting agencies in this was the Unified Police Department. I'm Detective Carrie Rigby. I'm with the Violent Crimes Unit there. Liaison Agent Rachel Butler has been a huge help also with the FBI. So one of our victims, Kylan Schulte, her wife was Crystal Turner, and she was reported missing on August 16th, 2021. She was found deceased on August 18th, 2021 at 11:23 a.m. Crystal Turner, her wife was Kylan. She worked at McDonald's in Moab. She was reported missing on August 16th, and she was found deceased on August 18th. At 11:23 as well. So as far as their relationship goes, they met in Moab in 2019. They were married in Arkansas on April 20th, 2021. Their friends described them as being devoted to each other. They lived what they call the van life and camped, or they stayed in their van around the area, and they did not have a permanent residence. They also plan on returning to church together. So days prior to the homicide, on August 12th at 5:30, Kylan and Crystal both worked their normal shifts and came down from the campground that they had been staying in. They were in the area, went and took a shower, and at 18:22, Kylan and Crystal's vehicle can be seen on surveillance returning to their campsite. At the time that they returned to their campsite, they have their first interaction with what they describe as being a creepy camper. Kylan and Crystal both reported the creepy camper and said that he pulled into the campsite and did what they described as a howl, and Crystal returned the howl. Kylan and Crystal both stated that they decided to the creepy camper decided to camp next to them and put his stuff really uncomfortably close to their campground. Kylan and Crystal both stayed in a hammock that night, and while they were laying in the hammock, they saw the guy creeping around their campground. They never confronted him, never said anything, and there was nothing ever said to him about it. On August 13th, Kylan and Crystal reported the creepy camper left the campground. And just before they were leaving the campground to go meet up with some friends in Moab, they said that the creepy camper returned back to the campground and started unpacking groceries and taking them out of its trunk. Kylan and Crystal both described described the creepy camper as being a man with a beard and no shirt. At 17:53, Kylan and Crystal's vehicle can be seen driving down the canyon into Moab. At 17:10, so 7 p.m., they arrived at the get together with their friends. There was no conflicts that night. There was no issues. They were just hanging out with friends. At 8:45, they left the get together, and they made a comment that if they don't show up to work, come looking for them. Kind of joked about it. There wasn't anything really serious in their statements being said, and friends were concerned, but not super worried about it. At 9 p.m., they went and hung out with another friend at their house, and they went for a drive and continued to kind of tell this friend about the creepy camper. But again, they didn't seem too worried about the creepy camper, and they wanted to return back up to their campground so they could retrieve the rabbit that they had with them. So the day of the homicide at 12:30, they left the friend's house from Moab, and they drove up. So about estimated time would have been about 1:15 that they would have returned to the campground. At 11:48, shots and screams were heard on surveillance in the nearby area. Now, we do have just a prior warning. Some of these pictures and some of the things that you are going to hear from here on out may not be something that you're comfortable with. The next one, you will be able to hear gunshots. You may be able to hear screaming like as previously described. And there are some images that, while they're not obviously terrible images, it could have blood on them. And so if you guys get squeamish. So again, those shots that you just heard, while they are faint and that you can just hear the shots being fired, that was determined the time that the homicide occurred. And that would have been August 14th at 11:48. So as far as the days after the homicide, obviously the scene was not initially first located. So at 5:30 on the 15th, Crystal was supposed to show up to work at McDonald's, but she didn't show up. Friends that worked with her assumed that because they were going to start returning to church, that this was something that they maybe just hadn't arranged. She just took the day off so that she could go back to church. So the coworker reached out to her on Facebook, but the messages went out but never were responded to or seen. On the 16th, Crystal again doesn't show up to work at 5:30 in the morning. And on the same day, Kylan doesn't show up to her job. So more messages were sent from friends, from coworkers, and nobody responded back. So a coworker spoke to their management at McDonald's, and it was decided to report both of them missing to police. So at 2:03, Moab Police Department took the report for the two missing persons. August 17th, family made pleas on Facebook to help find Crystal and Kylan. On August 18th, a family friend saw those pleas on Facebook and ended up responding out and trying to help find any kind of car or tent or anything that she could recognize as being belonging to Kylan and Crystal. And at 11:23, their campsite was found, and that family friend made calls to the sheriff's department reporting it. 3 calls were made by that caller. So again, these are just some scene photographs. While they are not obviously super terrible, we're not going to show anything too extreme. Just be prepared for those. So this is their campsite, how it was found when the sheriff's department arrived. You can see their car, you can see the tent, and then just kind of the general setup of how that scene was. This is just an overview, kind of give you an idea of how it's not very close to anything. It's far out from a lot of things. There is, a couple cabins nearby, but for the most part, it's just camping. So in this area, and I apologize for those on YouTube, you can't really see a whole ton. Try to point out, but there is 2 trees right here, and that's where this all where they were all camped out. So it's away from the road. It was off the road, difficult to see. So these were some bullets that were recovered during the autopsies of the girls. And these, again, like I was saying, just be cautious of what they are. So the first one is a full metal jacket bullet. The other 3 pictures are what we call a critical defense round. So it has a little plastic piece, like a red plastic piece. So while what you're looking at, it's red, that's not blood, that is actually just a plastic piece that is part of a bullet. Very unusual in any kind of situation. For as many homicides as I've done, this was definitely something that I had not seen before in a homicide. So that definitely caught my. So some of the key points of the investigation that obviously helped in this situation were the numerous interviews that were conducted. Investigator Whitney, the sheriff's department, they all did a ton of interviews regarding this. They received hundreds of tips from citizens, 44 search warrants, and probably plus more than that, but estimated 44 search warrants were written on this case. And then some of the main information that was gathered on this case was just some of the state and federal crime labs assistance for information. So like what we had already just showed you, the identification of the bullets used in the homicide. So the critical defense rounds, they were identified as Hornady critical defense rounds. And then they also pinpointed some vehicles coming and going from surveillance that was in that area. So the crime labs actually helped us, and they slowed down some of those videos. They actually were able to send some frozen screenshots, I guess, and helped us show us which ones were coming after the homicide occurred. Also the audio enhancement, which you guys have already heard, just of the shots being fired, so that we could hear if there were how many shots were being fired and what we were looking for there. And then the identification of any possible weapons that were used on that scene. So they were able to ID the most likely used gun on that scene. So possible theories in this homicide, and obviously these are just a few of them. Maybe some more of the prominent ones were the family conflicts that the girls may have had, a prior stalker for many of the girls, financial conflicts, drugs, the Brian Landry theory, hunters on the mountain, and arguments with a threatening coworker, and the creepy camper. The only two we were unable to clear out from all of that list there were the last two. So the argument with the threatening coworker and the creepy camper were the only ones that we were not able to eliminate. And again, some of the key evidence that came into play from the state crime lab and from the interviews that were done, the vehicle seen leaving after the homicide, one of the vehicles that came into focus was a Toyota Yaris that left at 12:54. The red tipped ammo, the Hornady critical defense round, like I was saying, it's rare that those are used. A man camping in the area and has a beard, that was one that we couldn't locate. And then a list of possible used guns. And that was listed as being a Glock 17 or 19. And it was a 9mm handgun that was likely to be used. So this is one of the screenshots of the vehicle leaving at 12:54. It was a Toyota Yaris. And the reason that became a focus of the investigation was because it was a vehicle that did not fit the typical vehicles that were coming and going. As far as all the other vehicles that were seen coming and going during that time, for the most part, it was SUVs, it was trucks, it was a camper trailer, it was, the typical things you'd see up in the mountains. This one was a Toyota Yaris, something that that you don't see every day. It's not something you typically take camping. It was something that obviously stuck out to investigators. This is Adam Kinkowitz. I apologize if I say that name incorrectly. He was employed with McDonald's. He also lived the van life. He had conflict with workers at McDonald's and became threatening and hostile. He never returned to work after the homicide, never picked up his last check, and he was not responding to law enforcement when they were trying to contact him. So as far as arguments that Adam had with employees at McDonald's, on August 8th, prior to the homicide, Adam became irate at a McDonald's night manager because they were telling him he needed to go faster. Got into this manager space and started making comments and making derogatory comments towards her, specifically about her sexuality. Adam was pacing around, punching his fist to his hand. Other coworkers reported that he said he should, quote, take her outside and kick her ass. The night manager left the store because they did feel like it was going to be an issue and that Adam would do something to him. Another manager came in to help de-escalate the situation and try to work that situation out. And Adam became threatening towards her, got into her space, wouldn't really leave her alone, became threatening towards her and started pushing towards her and wouldn't move away when he was asked. So eventually Adam was told he needed to clock out and he needed to leave because he wouldn't calm down and he wasn't following the directions that they were giving him. So the conflict with Crystal and Adam, on August 7th or 8th, Adam had seen Crystal walk behind the McDonald's counter. So she started making sandwiches for herself and Kylan, which was a normal practice at that time. Crystal was not in uniform and was calling out to Kylan, asking her what kind of sandwiches she wanted and called her baby. Adam was obviously upset that Crystal was back behind the counter and asked another employee if she can do that. The employee said it was apparent that he was upset that it was Crystal that was behind the counter and that she was making sandwiches for her girlfriend rather than just making food in general. So no one can confirm Adam ever confronted Crystal or ever said anything to her, and it is not believed that there was ever an argument between those two specifically. Crystal and Adam did not work the same shift, so they never had any kind of interactions together. They never crossed paths for the most part. They usually worked opposite shifts of each other. So the only time Crystal may have ever interacted with Adam would have been coming in on her time off to make sandwiches, get ice, things like that. Also during this time, masks were worn during work shifts. It was a requirement by McDonald's. And so there's a good chance that if they did see each other or if Crystal saw Adam, she was not going to recognize him. Adam never returned to get his last paycheck once again, even after the homicide, just after the homicide occurred. So the attempted contact with Adam, eventually Grand County investigators did respond out to another state to try to make contact with Adam for the addresses that they had on file. Adam was not at the listed address and it was found to be old addresses. However, it was located, registration for that vehicle was located, and it was found that Adam owned a 2007 Toyota Yaris, which was sold in Waterloo, Iowa in December of 2021. And that's a photograph of the Yaris next to it. That is not Adam in the Yaris, just so you guys are aware. Investigators made contact with Waterloo Police Department. It was found that on September 24th, it was reported Adam had committed suicide. So Adam had actually shot and killed himself in a motel out in Waterloo, Iowa, using a revolver to commit suicide, and he had used Hornady special critical defense rounds. And that's a photograph of those rounds. In the suicide note, Waterloo photographed one suicide note which mentioned being terminated for not working fast enough and that he was terminated by lefty liberal bosses. Adam also mentioned in the note that he had a significant other. It should be noted that Adam's family has been very cooperative with law enforcement, and they simply seek the same answers that everybody else does. So they have been very helpful through this. So the Waterloo suicide investigation, after determining Adam's death was a suicide, all of his property was released to his family. Not much of it was actually released. So the family did not take all of his property. And unfortunately, a lot of it was actually thrown away when they relinquished his car. So when they did go and respond out to Waterloo, luckily enough, the family did take 3 cell phones, some paperwork, some safety deposit keys. But the Yaris itself was actually relinquished to a tow company, and everything inside that car was eventually thrown away by the tow company. Prior to it being relinquished, the family did find a bag full of bullets in the car, and they were not documented to be specific of what kind or anything like that. They were just destroyed by the agency out there. Adam's family chose to have his remains cremated at that time. Some of the paperwork that was recovered in Adam's vehicle was a purchase for a gun from 2019. The family provided a copy of the purchase's receipt, and it was found that the purchase of the gun was for a Glock 19 9mm handgun. It also had a purchase for Hornady 9mm ammo. Now, contacting the company that actually sold him the gun, they said they could not confirm whether or not it was going to be hollow point or if it was critical defense rounds, but they can confirm it was a specialty round. So it would be either a hollow point or it would be that critical defense round. But because of the total, that's how they were able to determine that part. The Remington 9mm ammo was also purchased at that time, which could also match up with the full metal jacket round that was also found during the autopsies. So again, just to point out some of the obvious, the Glock 19 was one of the guns that was labeled as from the state crime lab as being the most likely used gun in the homicide. So as far as Adam's family dynamic, Adam wasn't really on speaking terms with his family. His family did assist him with hotels off and on while he was kind of living that van life. So if it became a necessity, family would try to help him out. And they actually assisted him with the last 2 weeks prior to his suicide while he was out in Waterloo. When he got out to Waterloo, the family was under the impression he was doing well and that he was happy. They said just prior to leaving for Waterloo, they actually received a weird message that they were concerned about. And they had said that they received the message on August 13th at 1:50, and it was a goodbye email saying goodbye to his family. A warrant was written for a messaging app for the stuff that was obviously found on Adam's phone, and conversations with the significant other were found. So there were no conversations about the shooting or murders at all. And it was noted that any conversations during the 14th and the 16th were completely non-existent. There was absolutely no communication on his phone. There was nothing on any kind of social media, anything on the messaging app, nothing during the 14th and 16th. So on the 16th, Adam's phone goes live again using a local Wi-Fi at a business nearby. So the text now does also reveal that on August 24th, he leaves for Waterloo, Iowa to go and be with his significant other. The conversations also reveal that during the time that he is out in Waterloo, that the relationship appears to kind of be up and down just prior to his suicide. So the cell phone downloads, once we were able to actually get into them, obviously his family were nice enough to hand those over to us and let us use those. They deleted most of the, he deleted most of them. So Adam deleted most of the content on those phones on August 26th and downloaded an encryption app in an attempt to delete anything else from there. So he deleted all photographs of himself out in Moab. Whether it was just something of him sitting there, it didn't really matter. He deleted them. And it was during that same time period that he deleted it. It was after the homicide. We also located some memos and screenshots inside his phone. Some of those memos and things that he was looking at showed extreme signs of racism, and the notes showed huge signs of problems with anger. So we also located an encrypted email that we were unable to get into just because of the time passed. We found notes in his phone that actually mentioned the area of the homicide occurred, but it was documented months prior. So he was familiar with that area. He had been in that area to camp, but it was just months prior that he had been documenting those. The notes talked about inside his phone, there were also notes and memos about raping and killing other people and how it was a constant thought in his mind. He also deleted and got rid of any of his Google history and his Google accounts and Facebook accounts just prior to his suicide. So these are just some screenshots from his phone. So these are just some like articles he had screenshot about the bullets that we were actually looking into, and then also the same gun that we were also investigating. So this is the same timeline that we just went through with Kylan and Crystal. The stuff in red is actually going to be Adam's timeline. So I'm not going to reiterate the same things of what Kylan and Crystal were doing. I'm just going to show you where Adam kind of fits in there and point out the main key points. So on the 12th, Adam goes and takes a shower and responds about a text. So nothing huge on that one, but just documenting where he was. On the 13th, Crystal and Kylan reported that the creepy camper left the campground. So at 9:30, Adam shows that he went showered at a local business. And he actually started asking that day about getting a refund on his season pass. At 12:51, Adam calls that same business and he's very persistent about trying to get a refund. At 13:06, Adam calls McDonald's. And then 13:15, Adam calls about the refund again. At 13:50 is when Adam sends the goodbye email to his family that reads, "Goodbye, brother." At 13:57, Adam goes to the local market around here and actually spends just under $50 for groceries. At 2:04, Adam purchases $24 in gasoline. And then at 15:34, a black Toyota Yaris is seen driving up towards the campsite. Kylan and Crystal said just before leaving, which would have been at 5:53 is when they left. They said that the creepy camper showed up to their campsite and was taking groceries out of the car. So again, 8:13, 2021, 3:34. That's a picture of a vehicle that was headed up there. That is the vehicle in the Unified Police Department evidence lot. And then the one just on the right is going to be the same vehicle leaving just after the homicide. So on August 14th, again, shots were fired at 11:48. The Toyota Yaris is seen going down the canyon at 12:54. At 13:32, Adam showers at a local business. And at 14:17, Adam purchases more gasoline. At 14:25, Adam purchases $10 in groceries. And then he goes dark. So on the 15th, Adam doesn't have any kind of response, doesn't have anything on his phone, has no location, nothing on his phone. And on the 16th, when posts are going up about the girls, Adam signs on to the Wi-Fi, gets more gasoline. He notes the Mill Creek camping, which is local around here. And then he also starts searching Telluride, Colorado businesses. On the 17th, I apologize. 17th is when the posts go up. Adam makes phone calls to a studio in Telluride and then starts making calls to a center in Telluride, and is believed to actually be out there with purchases he's made. On the 18th, Adam receives a text message from Moab and he turns it down because he stated he had another job, which he did not. So furthering after that, Adam on the 20th is in Telluride, Colorado. On the 24th, he is contacting his significant other and starts to communicate with him about going out to Waterloo, Iowa. His significant other and him had not had communication for several months. So he had just randomly texted him and started asking if he could come out there and stay with him. On the 27th, Adam arrives in Waterloo. And on the 3rd, family paid for a week at a motel. On the 17th, Adam's relationship starts changing with his significant other. Things started changing. He wasn't getting the same responses back. Things were very short. He kept apologizing, asking for answers. And on the 18th is when he again sends goodbye and then asks to see his significant other one last time. On the 23rd, Adam receives a rejection from a job that he had put in for out in Waterloo. And on the 24th, they receive a call from the motel about Adam's death. So we were able to locate the significant other and we were able to go and talk to him. He was very forthcoming. We had already cleared him and knew that he was not in the area. But once we started talking to him, initially his very first thing was that he knew why we were there. When we asked why he thought we were there, his statement was because Adam had killed 2 people in Utah. The SO said Adam had told him that he had killed the 2 people and that they were women. He said that Adam shot the women while they were in the tent, and that Adam had thrown the gun that he had used to shoot him somewhere, but he wasn't sure of where he had thrown it. He said that he also shot one of the women shot them both because one of the women that was there was a woman that he worked with, and he didn't like her because she was bossy. Adam again said that he shot the women inside the tent. The significant other tried to look up the case while he was with Adam, and Adam stopped him and begged him not to look it up. The significant other said he did not do anything about it because he was scared of Adam. He said he didn't know what he would do to him if he did something about it. When we asked why he hadn't called anything like that after Adam died, he said he was unaware Adam was dead. And he said he didn't know he committed suicide, and he thought that Adam had simply left the area. He said that the reason Adam had told him was because there was a conflict as to why Adam wouldn't go and get a job while he was out in Waterloo. He said that when it came up, he said, why won't you just work? Basically, it was because he was worried that investigators would find him and that we would be able to locate him that way. So some of the information that we were able to verify from the significant other statement, obviously there was some information that he gave us that was not released, which is what we have talked about. So the women were not found inside of the tent. The women were shot inside of the tent and moved. That was only known to law enforcement. Nobody else was aware of that. That was something that was kept quiet. And there was only one way that they would have known that the women were killed inside the tent, is if they were there. The significant other, obviously, we had already verified was not in Utah at the time. So we were very, very clear to know the only way they would have gotten that information would have been from Adam. So a little bit more of the investigation from his phone. So again, he had looked up some of the areas there. He also had the threats on his phone. This is a screenshot from one of the memos on his phone, which is a threat on 3/18/21. Says, I'm afraid I have an ongoing impulse in me to kill or rape people. I overworked myself, and that's caused me to feel bad and think negative, evil thoughts. And this doesn't define me or say who I am. And I can say it another way redundantly if I wish. I'm a free person. So this is just part of that. But he continues on to talk about how he has repeated thoughts about killing people and how he's worried he's going to follow through with it. And while he's not worried about the other people, basically, he's worried about being judged for it. So he's also very, he makes several statements that are very racist and threatening to others in the memos. He's also very paranoid in some things. He would track license plates for unknown reasons. He would start tracking, different people that he had seen. He would start describing incidents that he had of why people were threatening to him or demasculating him. And these were all memos that were kept on his phone. After we released the initial information of Adam being a suspect in the homicide, we received a tip from people who had been out here, out camping around March, and said that they had been on a family camping trip, and a man fitting the same description and having the same name of Adam and Pinkowitz of being the last name had been in that area. They said that while he had thought everybody had left, they found him scavenging coolers in their camp area. They invited him over and had him stay for dinner, but then he continued to stay around the campground, and that he overstayed his welcome. And then when they had asked him, okay, it's time for you to go, he became aggressive when he was asked to leave. So this is a photograph of that campground showing the Yaris in the background, and that being Adam sitting in between the tent and the car. So just fitting the very things Kylan and Crystal described to their friend.
Well, there you go. What are your thoughts on this one? I hope, folks, that you'll enter your thoughts down below. Do you think that they met the burden of explaining why this person is the suspect in this case and the one that they believe committed this double homicide? I think you can share your thoughts below and do so in a really productive manner, and I hope that you'll be really respectful of each other as you reflect on what people have to say. This one has been a tough case. I also am going to be interested in what your thoughts are when it talks about his significant other. For many months, I wondered if this had something to do with a hate crime and the fact that these two women were involved in a lesbian relationship. Well, if I'm hearing everything right, his significant other sounds like a man. I don't know, and I want to know if any of you know the answers to that. But that kind of takes it away and pushes it more toward the anger that was apparently expressed. So give me your thoughts. Please make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button and sharing Profiling Evil with all your friends. And make sure you're checking us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check us out at profilingevil.com. Thanks so much for your support of Profiling Evil, and we'll see you soon at the next crime scene.